Hello, everyone. My name is Bob One. I'm one of the directors at the North Texas Lone Star STC chapter. I wanted to introduce Chris Ward, who's our speaker today. I've known Chris for several years, and he's been very active in the technical writing community. He was presented at STC several times, and I first met him at a leadership conference for STC when he was talking about how to help build a community, and I've seen him present several of the topics. And one thing about Chris to keep in mind is he's very funny. He's got some comical, characters that he performs with when we go to STC meetings and stuff like that. And he's also very knowledgeable. He's got a very interesting background. And so I'm really pleased to be here for this, Chris. Really looking forward to it. Thanks.
Bob, that was probably the best intro I've ever gotten. The best $5 I ever spent. But thanks. And I got to admit, I love doing presentations for the Lone Star chapter. It's actually my favorite chapter. I am a native, born in Irving, Texas. Lived there all my life, up in that area, so I'm very familiar with it. And I do like talking to y'all folk. It's really fun for me. But today, what I wanted to go over is something actually, it's not really a new concept. It's actually kind of a concept that's just kind of been lingering for a very long time, but we've actually really got some traction lately and some new innovations on it. The company I work for is WebWorks, and we've been servicing the technical writing industry for about 25 years. Through this COVID, this concept of ours kind of came out of this COVID shutdown. When we were shut down and we were working from home, we were all just kind of talking about this. And we kind of examined this concept of a simple authoring tool. A couple of things before we really get started. So what I like to do in my presentations is that you're not going to break my rhythm by asking questions. Please, I encourage them. So please do ask questions if they come up. This, unfortunately, is a topic to where it's really easy to start bouncing around and seem like we're getting off track. So if I do lose you, speak up, absolutely. And of course, I'm going to check in with you from time to time as well. So when I'm checking in, even if you have your mics muted or something like that, just hit a key on the keyboard, give us a nod. Just let me know that everybody's still following, right? Because I'm probably going to be introducing some stuff that you've never seen before, but I'm probably also going to be introducing some stuff that you're very familiar with. But I'll be tying it together in hopefully a new way. And so to kind of show you, hey, this is where we're heading in the future. But as Bob said, many roles at WebWorks as WebWorks strategy developer I am a business analyst. I actually got my start in analytics through military intelligence. So I've really had a lot of experience taking the theoretical and making it actually into real world examples. But so that's a little bit of my background, but let's get started because this is, like I said, we're going to try to cover a lot of stuff in here. And I'm very also to Faith that at the end, if I can have a link to this recording as well, would that be okay? Okay, thank you very much. But so here's the problem we were trying to solve. How do we create a collaborative environment simple enough for SMEs to contribute, but powerful enough for technical content architects? And I specifically use the word there for architect because as far as, like I said, what's been around for a very long time, you will see that simply authoring tools and simple publishing, that workflow has been around for a very long time. But unfortunately, when it comes to trying to maximize workflows for content, trying to minimize expenses for content, that really doesn't address those problems. And so that's why it's been very hard to kind of meld the two worlds together. Well, first of all, I should say, that's why the two worlds were very separate for a very long time, right? Because when it came to documentation, SMEs really didn't understand how complicated and how large or just kind of the responsibilities that technical content architects have when it comes to documentation. And it's not because they didn't want to, it's just because they were never exposed to that world, right? They are subject matter experts for one particular reason. It's because they're experts on that subject and that's where they live, right? So we were trying to say, how do we bring these worlds together? What happens? So when we say simple enough for an SME can use, we mean we want a system that they can contribute content to without having to learn a new system. You know, it's something that they will be eager to contribute as opposed to learning something new, right? Because often that's what happens when you try to move a subject matter expert into a technical writer's world. They don't like the tools. It's not set up. They're used to tools for, you know, like, so let's take software developers. Software developers are very used. I mean, they love and live in the command line interface. That's where they like to be, right? Whereas when it comes to content, we have to contend with styling and formatting to make sure a message is delivered in a proper way, right? We also too have regulations that they don't have to adhere to, right? I mean, you ask a developer what a style guide is, and they're going to think it's somebody they hired to dress them on Saturday night, right? So we were looking for a system, or how can we get them into an easy system that they don't have to learn a lot, because our goal there is to maximize the contribution with a limited amount of time, right? So powerful, that's what we mean as far as like, how can it be simple enough for SMEs, but powerful enough for technical writers? Well, what we're talking about there is that we want an area that a technical content architect can build, manage, refine, and store content. Now, I use those words specifically because they're more generalized. I mean, if we're talking about a content workflow, you're going to get a lot about review, commenting, you know, some terms that we're familiar with. But basically is what we're doing is to get in a system that everybody can collaborate and everybody can understand. What we're talking about is managing, refine, store content. Because even in a developer's world, we can start talking about branching and different things that they use with their code, but it's not really a conversation we want to start. We want to start a conversation to where it's a generalized workflow that's simple enough for SMEs to understand, powerful enough for technical writers to use and perform their duties. So the goal there is a system with a complete set of tools for the most efficient workflow. So those couple of slides there just kind of summed up just the problem and what we were trying to accomplish. Is everybody good on that? I mean, does that make sense to everybody? I got a thumbs up there. Thank you, Jake. All right, looks good. Got some head nods. Okay, let's move on then. What was the solution? Well, as in every process, or actually is what's kind of I have found when I'm working with people and we're talking processes, and this is in analytics, is that it never fails. Whenever I'm talking to somebody, let's say, you know, you want to accomplish a procedure and there's 5 steps in this procedure to go into. Whenever I start talking to somebody about that procedure as an analyst, everybody always starts with either the second or third. They never start with the first. All right. And the reason being is because the first is so intuitive to that person now. They learned it and they use it that they really aren't consciously thinking about it anymore. So they're going to go right to where their conscious part gets into the process, which is about the second or third. But when you're bringing new people into the mix, you have to understand what that number 1 point is, and you have to start from there. So to build or to get a solution to this problem, we started with the authoring tool. And we said, okay, for a myriad of reasons, the authoring tool needs to be a simple authoring tool. Okay, when I say simple, is what I mean by there is that simple to read raw format. Has anybody ever opened up a Word document in Notepad? If you ever do that, you will not see headings and paragraphs. You will see tons of special characters that just go all over the place, right? Same thing with a FrameMaker file. If you ever try to open that up in Notepad, even if it will open it, there's going to be a lot of stuff there that just looks just absolutely like junk, just a mess of stuff, a mess of characters. All looks random. There's no logic to it. Well, what's happening there is that those are file formats that contain a lot of information centered around styling information, positioning, anchors, and also it's information that features that are included in that authoring tool. All that complexity is complexity that has to be learned, right? So if you're going to bring somebody into your collaborative environment and you're using that tool, then they have to understand that complexity before they can contribute. And we already identified that that was a barrier to entry for a lot of people. So if we go to a simple source, easy to read, something like a text-based authoring tool, then there is no styling information. Good example is, hey, who needs to take a course on how to type an email? Now remember, I didn't say how to type an email properly. I said how to type an email, right? Everybody can open up an email and start typing. Everybody can do that, right? So it's because it's a simple source, it's a simple format, okay? So that's where we wanted to start. We want to have a simple source, simple format. Another good thing about simple source and simple formats in your authoring tool is that it's easy to adapt and easy to start with simple document systems. And so what I mean by that is that, first of all, easy to adapt because anybody can pick it up and use it. As far as for simple document systems, when you don't have a file that has all that extra information in there, it's easy for a lot of systems to pick that file up and read it and then do something with it. Okay, so that's another benefit of having a simple authoring tool to start your process. And then finally, if you can have a simple authoring tool to start your process, you're going to get a lot more vendor support for larger document systems and more control. Because, and I'll show you here in these examples, you will see that a simple solution is probably not going to be the perfect solution or the perfect answer for what you're trying to do. But if you start with a simple authoring tool, you're going to have a lot of options out there for vendor support to get done what you need to get done. Right. And so again, that's going to be, it works it works the same way at the front end, to where you have a simple tool to where you can get your SMEs to come in and collaborate. It works on the back end as well, because now that's a simple tool. It's real easy to get vendors to come in and support you for what you're trying to do. So those are, I mean, there are other examples as well why you want to start this way, but those are the three big ones right there. Any questions on those? All right, let's get going. All right, and so what was the winner? We went with Markdown as far as a simple authoring tool. And the reason why we went with Markdown is because most SMEs already use Markdown in some form or fashion. Even if they don't know they're using Markdown, they're using it, okay? And so it's very easy for people to come in and contribute almost immediately with Markdown. Easy to type and very easy to learn. I mean, it really is easy to learn. It's so simple. And there is some syntax to Markdown, but again, it's very intuitive, very easy, right? And the final reason is that there's already an established vendor support. So you already have other systems out there, both open source and paid for, that are aware of Markdown. They can read its syntax and give you some output. So that's why with our solution, we said, hey, let's start with Markdown. That seems to be the way to go. So what exactly is Markdown? Okay, are there people on here? I mean, is everybody familiar with Markdown, or are there people that have never seen it before? Because if you're at either end of the spectrum, that's quite all right. Because I mean, I'll go through and explain some stuff. I see some people are familiar with Markdown, some people aren't. So we'll go ahead and go through this. I want to show you some examples. We're already at a quarter into it. So I am going to be very generalized here, but everybody's got my contact information. If you want me to talk more about Markdown or follow up with you, actually any topic we cover, if you want more information from me, feel free to email me after this and I'll be happy to follow up with you. But so here goes the generalized overview. So the overriding design goal for Markdown was to make it readable as possible. And that's very important. And when they say readable as possible, they don't mean just to the human eye. They mean they wanted machine readable as well. So machines can actually get in there and do something with that text file if they need to, right? It's a formatted document, so there is some formatting too, but it should be published as is. So basically they were looking for, when they wrote Markdown, they were already looking, they had documentation in mind, and they said, hey, we want a nice simple format to where we could actually publish, right? They were singularly focused from text to HTML. That's all they were focused on when they invented Markdown. And so that's how we got it. This URL I have at the bottom, the Daring Fireball, Daring Fireball. It's actually the site that is where it was. Let me see if I can get there. Here we go. This is the site that I pull most of my information on, John Gruber. And I mean, he is like a Markdown guru, and he just kind of laid the groundwork for Markdown and how it should be viewed and how it should be used. And anybody who has a Markdown converter, when I say Markdown converter, it will always be from text to HTML. They've based that process off what you can find at this website. So it's a good website if you want to learn more about Markdown, to kind of go check it out. So the next one. And then, so there's our simplified tool. We have simplified processing. And then now I want to kind of touch on a little bit on what's the difference between self and vendor supported solutions. So this is a very popular book out there. Have y'all heard this, Docs Like Code? Have you heard the term Docs Like Code? Okay, basically it's a concept where they say, hey, let's put docs into the tools software developers use so we can develop and publish as fast as they can with their code. Okay, and it's centric around GitHub. And so they use GitHub to store, to back up, because GitHub is a versioning system. And then they use it to also publish. So it's very simple, very self-contained, and something that anybody on this call can do. So if you wanted to publish documents today in HTML, you could do it using that. All right. There are some shortcomings when it comes to something like that, which I'll show you. I think it's all depends on where you are in your cycle when it comes to your documentation. If you're just starting out with documentation, you're a single person shop and you need to get some documents out there because that's what's most important. It's just make sure it's a published place that people can come and look for. Doc Like Code is perfect for you, right? If you need a few more features in there because you're a little bit more advanced or you may have a little bit more complicated product, then you are looking for, hey, how can I get a vendor supported solution out of it? And so what I want to do now is that I want to get into a little bit about, I want to show you a Markdown file, and then I'm actually going to show you Docs Like Code, and then I'm going to show you the vendor supported solution of the ePublisher Markdown++. Now, the reason, of course, why I'm picking Docs Like Code is because it's very popular amongst the technical writing community. Okay, and if you haven't heard about it, if you talk to somebody, I'm sure they've heard about it. The reason why I'm picking ePublisher Markdown++, it's because that's my company. That's the solution that we put out there, and I have the most experience with it. Are these the only two solutions for you? Absolutely not. There's tons out there. If you start researching Markdown publishing solutions, you'll see there's a lot out there. But what I'm about to show you as far as the difference between the two systems, that's going to be very common in all the solutions that you look at. Does that make sense? Okay, good. And the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to kind of give you some touching points so you can start asking yourself some questions when you're looking at solutions to get this collaborative environment that you want. All right, so let's start with that. And what I'm going to start with now is just I'm going to show you a Markdown file. Okay, so Markdown files, this is a very simple one that I'm showing you here. I can get a little bit more complex one. Let's see here. All right, so here's a much larger document, but again, it is in Markdown. Now, as you can see here, and this is the important thing to learn about Markdown, there is no styling information. You can see there's no styling information in these documents at all. But what you do have is a hierarchy. I can go from title to heading to paragraph. I can create tables if I need a great table. So there's alternate ways to display things. I can do lists, I can do structure, and I can do ordered lists. And I can also do linking. This is important too, where I can link to screenshots. I can incorporate that. So there are a lot of basic structures already inherited into Markdown and that syntax that you can use to publish documentation and actually produce a pretty good message. It also has inline character styles. This is bolding right here. So this is a markdown document. And this is the syntax that you would be using when you start typing things. Now, if you've never done it before and you're brand new to Markdown, I would recommend starting with the Docs as Code website. So I've got that right here. This is, and you can see it's docslikecode.com. And it's a quick start with Docs as Code. And I love this. I love this quick start. It's a great way to get you into it and get you starting with the process. Let's see, what's the difference between markup and markdown? If you can clarify, that would be great. Okay, awesome question. So markup is custom syntax and markdown. So it's what they're trying to do is that they're trying to stay within the guidelines of markdown, but then you've got some custom syntax in there that will allow you, that's not technically markdown, but will allow you to get some features. Great example is that within a markdown file, you can actually interject HTML code. And when you publish it, the HTML code will go through. Did that make sense? Okay. And Markdown 2 is more of a rigid standard. I mean, an asterisk, not an asterisk, a hashtag is going to be a heading. One hashtag is going to be a heading. Two hashtags are going to be a heading too. Whereas with markup, it's going to depend on what other either technology you're bringing into it, or you might have your own custom code, depending on the tools you're working with. Zora, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, you bet, perfect. All right, so if you're starting into or you're looking at this Docs like Code page, right? I just went through the steps. In fact, I did this afternoon, and it was just really easy to get going. So I went to github.com, and when you go to github.com, let me do this in the browser. When you go to github.com, you have the option, and this is all free, by the way. It won't cost you anything. But all right, it's going to make me log out. Don't want to log out just yet. But basically, on the starting page, you get the option to create an account. Okay, and they walk you through that here. They say refer to GitHub Pro account for our free account for technical writing. So this link right here is just a list of different services for it. You really can stick with the free to go through this to get yourself familiar with it. That's what I would recommend doing. This is a good process. It says, so in your browser, create a repository with the name as your GitHub username, followed by GitHub IO. So this is, by the way, the books, Ann Gentle is one of the authors of the book. So she used her name and github.io. I already had a login to GitHub. It's Christopher/Webworks. So you can see here, though, I made a repository of Christopher-Webworks.github.io. I did the exact same thing, okay? And then she says, name your file. And this is important. Enter index.md. Now, if you're not familiar with HTML, the index page is typically the start page of any website. So I have a feeling that that's kind of programmed in there, that when you publish from GitHub, is that it makes the index.md your website page. So be sure to name it index.me. And if you look here in my repository, that's what I did right here, index.me. I actually named the file index.md. MD, of course, stands for Markdown. So once you name the file, you can see they typed in a few things here. So when I went in here, I typed this, and let's look the raw. And you can see here, well, let's edit. Oh, it's a little better. So you can see here, I put the hashtag quick start guide for GitHub. And then this is just something I typed in, right? So again, that hashtag stands for a heading, my top level. So I put that in there, and then I finished. And then as they go through here, they say, add a few messages. And then they said, go to your page settings. Now, this was important because if you were just to leave it at that and save that file, you would not be publishing yet. So when you go to do this stage right here where it says settings, I encourage you to follow that, go to this page and do this. So under the settings, under pages, right here, this is going to say none to start with, or I'll say, yeah, I'll say none. Go ahead and select main. What this root directory is that GitHub is actually stored on a web server somewhere. So it's just creating that root directory for you. Okay. I also made my page public. And the reason why I made it public is because I didn't want to have to see if there were any firewalls or logins that I were going to have to use. I wanted to keep this simple. So I made it public, just make sure I didn't put anything too confidential on the site itself. So you make that public and you put that main branch in there and then you publish. So basically is what's going to happen now. Anytime I make a change to this page, once I push that change, because GitHub is a repository that works on a push and pull system, meaning that you make a change here, your repository, then you push it into the main repository, and that's where the changes live, okay? Every time you push that, it's going to then produce or publish your output. So in essence, it's almost real-time publishing, right? And the fact that you're making those changes and you're getting them out the real time. So here is the push and pull. I put that in, and then under the settings, under pages, you can select a theme of what you want your output to look like. Right now, if you don't select a theme, it will still be an HTML page, but it's going to be a basic white page with text, and that's it. Right? If you pick a theme, it's simple. You just pick a theme. You select the theme, it downloads it for you. And it's what I actually picked, is I actually picked the Merlot theme. That's what I have in my document. So let's get back to that. So now that I have it set up and I have my theme ready, you can see here in the documents, it says, go to pages, even more scenarios. That's just basically talking about how you set your page up. But to get to your published document, it says, wait a few seconds and then go to your new page. And then basically that's your username, github.github.io, your username. Now, remember, it says your username, but you're not actually putting your username in there. You're putting the name of the repository that you built. So don't get confused on that step, right? So remember in the instructions, it told you to name the repository with your username. I think they did that just so it's easy for you to remember and then you can get to it. But that's where we're going. We're going to the repository name and then that URL address. And then it's going to show me a published output with the index page. So we'll do that now. And boom, there I have it. Published documentation. You see here, quick start for GitHub. That was my heading. And then I am learning GitHub by publishing on GitHub pages. And then I've got it in my nice Merlot theme. So not bad, right? I mean, pretty easy, pretty simple, right? Yeah, I mean, is that something you guys think you could just jump in and do? Absolutely you could. Absolutely you could. So that is a pretty good solution. I like it, like I said, because it really kind of gets you familiar with this push-pull concept, GitHub, and quick markdown publishing, right? Just to show you too, if you want to make changes into it, all you have to do is go in here. We'll say this is a change. So that, of course, would be now you got to commit the change. That's the difference between a push and pull system, is I'm committing the change here, right? Extended description is optional, but you do need to put a description in there. And the reason why you're doing this is because every time you commit a change, what happens is that it's logging those changes, right? And it's just your versioning and your control, right? Your backup control. If I go here and I hit a refresh, you can see it hasn't updated here yet. So there is a slight delay from the GitHub system to get it up there, but eventually it will update. and you will see your changes out there. Sometimes you got to do a Shift F5 for a hard one, but it just hasn't pushed it yet. And so there's really nothing you can do to speed that process up. That's all based on GitHub. Okay. So, but right there, quick system, gets those things out there. This is all self-publishing. It can be self-managed. You can do it very easy, and you would have a published output. You would have a published output with a pretty nice theme to it. Okay, so we got another question here. It says, can we use GitHub to host our portfolio? Just curious. This would be like killing two birds with one stone, but would like my opinion. Okay, well, when you say portfolio, can you be a little bit more descriptive about that, what you mean and what it contains?
Yes, Christopher. I mean, like your tech writing portfolio. Instead of having your own website, can I use GitHub to sort of create a website of my own and publish it here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, first, what you would have to do, of course, is that all the information that you have on your portfolio, you want to put that into a Markdown document, right? And then you want to, and it would be actually a really good exercise to learn about, Markdown and how to write and how to create content with messaging, focused messaging. That would be a good drill. But you are going to run into the same limitations of a self-managed system that you would with traditional documentation for product. And one of those things would be is that, and of course, these are the things I wanted to point out to you all. So you could start making decisions like, hey, do I really want to put my portfolio into GitHub, right? Mm-hmm. So here's some things. You can see here, this is my themed published output. I can go in here and I can check my other themes. And it can show me what they are. One thing I did realize is that none of these themes come with a search, right? Oh. So if I'm doing a published documentation for my customers, I might need to provide a search for them, right? And you can see if my documentation started to grow and I even had outside resources that I was going to link to, this would become an issue, right? So there are ways around that, but that's where you start. That's one of the differences you have between a self-managed system or solution and a vendor-supported solution, right? Now, there are going to be ways, because this is open source, and there absolutely will be ways that you can say, well, I got to be able to come in and change the color. I have to be able to move some things around. There's got to be, and if you know anything about HTML, you're saying to yourself, hey, look, I know I can get in here and crack the CSS and make it look like I want to, right? Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. You'll probably be able to do that. But at that point, man, you got to ask yourself, am I a content creator or am I a web designer, right? Where do you want to spend your time? Because it's self-managed. So if you're going to make those changes, you're going to be managing those changes on your own, okay?
Okay.
Here's another slight drawback from this kind of system. So as you can see, I've got my repository right here. It's living in the cloud, right? And so I've got my index in here. This is my file. And if I'm going to do any editing, I'm doing it here, okay? So you start running into this, well, how do I collaborate? How do I get others to come in and work on this with me, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, if you're another technical writer, more than likely, they're gonna have to come in through this area, click on an index file and start making some changes, okay? If you want a software developer to do it, it's a whole new world for them, okay? And so let's look at what a software developer would do, because I mean, I know what you're saying. You're going, hey, look, software developers use GitHub. Every one of them have it. I'm sure they're familiar with this. Well, this is how they use GitHub. All right. They have what they call a GitHub Desktop. Okay. And in the GitHub Desktop, it is a shortcut. Like I've got this little shortcut here on my desktop. That's my GitHub Desktop. It's a shortcut that I clicked on, and it's giving me a view of all the repositories that I have access to, okay? Now, all these repositories actually live on my desktop. They're mirrored copies of what I have in GitHub stored up there, right? So when I go to this one, which is this is the one I just showed you. This one is this one right here. I've got some pretty good indications, right? It's telling me, hey, I've got 4 comments from the original remote that I've got to pull in. So in essence, it's telling you that your local repository is not up to date with what's in GitHub. So that's a good collaborative measure there, right? Because now you have people who are synchronizing their copies. So everybody's only working from one direct copy, okay? But this is how programmers do it. So they'll pull that in and then boom, now I'm up and I'm good. So now I'm looking at this and I'm saying, you're saying to yourself, or you should be saying to yourself, well, okay, why put it locally? Because right here, I don't see any way to edit this file, right? This just kind of shows me that the repository I had local was not matching the repository that I had in GitHub. So what do I do now? Well, if you're a developer, right here, this is why this is #1 on GitHub. They're going to say open in Visual Studio. Most developers will work in Visual Studio. This is what Visual Studio looks like, right? And so if you can see here, this is my index, conditions and variables, config. And then if I go to that repository I was looking at, those are all my files. So I've got a mirrored copy, but I've got it now in a tool that's designed for a programmer to work in. Programmers have their own development environment that they work in. Microsoft does Visual Studio, and they are a vendor. So now you're looking at a case of a vendor-supported solution. So we're moving now from a self-managed solution, which is you singularly working into GitHub, to now we're moving into, okay, I need some kind of collaboration. How am I going to collaborate? Now I got a vendor-supported solution that's bringing me some tools to collaborate with. Does this make sense?
This is great. Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Good. Perfect. So this is what they're looking at, and this is what they want to, what they want to work in. Okay. So now they go through a process, right? And when they go through this process, this is my change, right? So this is in Visual Studio. So this is all happening locally for them. I'm going to save this change. All right. Once I save this change, you can see now I'm getting indications from the program that, hey, look, you've got changes locally that are not reflected in the main repository in GitHub. So I can go in here and it's giving me a diff in these changes. I can stage changes, a lot of options. We're not going to go into all of them, but I'm just kind of showing you the workflow, right? It's not a matter of just making a change, typing it and pushing it or saving it, right? Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to commit. I'm committing. You can see here, I still have to do a comment. I hit return. Now I have to sync the changes, right? I want to commit. I had to put in my comment. Now I'm syncing the changes. It's saying this is going to be a push and pull action. I'm going to hit OK, and then boom. So if you look at it, it says, remember, the one in our repository had just this is a change. I just added this is my change. And you can actually now, I can go back to, remember, this is the repository in GitHub. I can go back to here and I can look at it and it's updated my change. And then when I come to this published output, you can see where that was my change previous, but it hasn't updated the most recent change because there's a delay. But I still now have a collaborative workflow. Does that make sense? We got it? So vendor-supported solution, collaborative workflow, and it is a little bit more complicated because I mean, now I'm doing, but I'm in an environment that developers are actually going to want to use and they'll contribute. And then I can get some published output. So can you see how we're getting closer to that solution to where we said, hey, simple enough for a subject matter expert to use, but smart enough for a technical writer, a technical content architect to use? I mean, do y'all see the process, how we're getting there? Am I showing you that well enough? Okay. Any questions up to this point?
There is a question in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yep. Does GitHub Desktop simplify resolving conflicts, rebasing, reverting to old versions, etc.? It does not simplify it. It doesn't complicate it, but it doesn't simplify it. Basically, is what's happening is that you still have those functions that you do in GitHub to where, you would reserve conflicts, because I can't really show you conflicts right now because I'm the only person in here, right? But if we had other users and they were pushing and pulling, I would be getting requests. See, I have pull requests here. So I would look at those requests. It would give me an option to kind of see the diff between them like I did here, and seeing those changes. It would kind of give me an option to see the diff. And then we would resolve issues and then we push it, right? So it doesn't simplify it, but doesn't complicate it. All it does is move it to where you can now include your local repository so you can collaborate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, perfect. So that's what's going on there with the desktop. The reason why developers want it and need it is because they want this Visual Studio, right? They want to use that environment because that's essential to their development environment, right? Visual Studio was actually around before GitHub, and that's what a lot of programmers and developers were using. And the reason why they use this is because they can I lost my word there, but they can check their code, validate. They can validate their code. They can actually test their code. They can run things to see what happens within this environment. That's why it's real important for them to use it. Let's see, do we set up policies for push and pulls? Yes, you would. It's just like every other standard system out there. You would set roles. In fact, when you add a repository, you add a user, it asks you, do you trust this user? Are these users always to be trusted? I can't show you because I can't add a user right now. And I do appreciate it. And I tell you what, if you want to see that, let's take that offline because I only have an hour and I still got to show you one last part of this, the last part of this puzzle. So, okay, good. Thanks, Zora. I appreciate the understanding. So, but basically you'll have all those possibilities as far as setting roles, pretty much what regular systems would do when you want to collaborate. Here's the big thing to note, and this is what is going to help you adapt a solution that everybody can use. And, okay, so this is a content management system you're collaborating on here. I haven't mentioned a very specific feature that is predominant in content management systems. And that feature is locking files. Does everybody know what I'm talking about when I say locking files? Okay, so typically a technical writer's workflow is that you're going to work on a file, so you grab that file and you lock that file so nobody else has access to it. Code developers used to do that. That's the way they used to develop code. And what they found out is that they spend about 20% of their time managing locks. And it became very ineffective, especially as your code grew and you started working with several other branches. That's why they went to a push and pull workflow. So if you want to get that wide adaptation of a solution, you're probably going to want to look for a solution that instead of codes, it uses a push and pull system with conflict resolution. And that was pretty important. Did that make sense to everybody? Yep. Okay. All right. So what are we missing there? It sounds like we got a pretty good system here. What are we missing? This is what we're missing. Right now, this is the best you're going to get. unless you really put in some effort and become a web developer, right? And then it's really going to take some effort if you want to get into search capabilities, TOCs. Is it going to be responsive design, things like that, right? What we're another thing we're missing is that even though Markdown is the standard that we started with, and we intentionally started with it because it was a simplified authoring environment, it really doesn't have tools for large document sets or efficiency. Big example, content reuse in Markdown. You don't have includes. You don't have like a way to insert a certain amount of content into another document, right? So you don't have these includes. Another thing too, we don't have conditions and variables in Markdown, right? Which would be a really nice to have. Second thing too, is that back to the publishing. When I'm going to publish, because I mean, it's real simple to create a list, which is awesome. It's even simpler to create a table. I mean, for a list, I'm literally doing this. And if you noticed, the program is smart enough to realize that I'm in a list, and it's automatically adding that asterisk for the next list item and letting me type the list item, right? Boom. And then I got to just hit return, and now I'm out of the list. That's how I create a list in there, right? So for simple changes, easy to do. Tables are just as easy. Okay, and as you can see, this is a preview. This is an HTML preview. It already put my list items in there, right? So why is that? You know, how can I say no to that? I mean, that's awesome. Well, what if I need a little more indent? What if I need a different symbol? What if I need a note? What if I need a tip? You know, what if I need to put information in between the line items? You know, what do I do? Okay, so this is where you're saying, okay, now we're moving from self-managed solution to a full vendor supported solution. Okay, well, full vendor supported solution, that's what we have in ePublisher with the Markdown++. So, and this is just our kind of cloud repository. This is our GitHub. This is our GitHub, what I'm showing right now. But so basically is what I have, or what we have in here, is that I now have a document that has what we call more of a markup document, and more to your point, Zora, in the question you asked later, that has some custom elements in it that allow me to get all that content architect that I want, right? I mean, Markdown's awesome because we do have a hierarchy in there. We can do headings, titles, things like that. But when it comes to really putting something together, then are really managing large document sets, you probably are going to need a vendor that can support you and giving you some of those features. For example, we've got the includes in here for that. And then we also have conditions and variables. If you want to use conditions and variables, for example, you can see here, this is a comment. So Markdown has comments very similar to comments in code. These comments do not show on any preview or any published output. They're comments in the raw data, so that you can, anybody who's looking at the raw data can kind of get a clue, kind of get a hit. We use these conditions or these comments to add conditions or markers that help give you the architect that you need, bringing in third-party documents, you know, whatever you need to do to publish your output. Because what it does for you is that it moves you from a very simple output like this to where, and y'all saw these were all Markdown documents that I was using, to where now you can get a published output like this. One that, you know, you're going to have all the searching that you want, as far as the highlight searching that comes in there, searching filters if you want searching filters, and then You've got also too your table of contents, your breadcrumbs, everything that you use today to help those customers find the information that they need in a large document set. I have a good friend who says, nobody likes looking for their keys, but everybody likes finding their keys, right? So that's what we help. We help people find their keys on a global scale, right? We as writers. So that's like a fully supported solution with your ultimate collaboration. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for something that, one, starts with a simple authoring tool in a simple format. We chose Markdown because it's pretty widely accepted already. Once you get that simple format, then now you're going through that stages. Now you're going through the stages of, okay, here's my documentation. Can it be self-managed? Zora gave us a great example, such as her profile, putting her profile up on GitHub so people would have access. Absolutely a self-managed project that you want to do, right? But then we get into larger document sets. Can I handle it with the simple publishing that I have out there? Or do I need more? Or do I need to give my customers more as far as finding it, right? Because as far as, so I mean, that's kind of the process that you're moving through. One more thing I'll show you too is that, well, okay, let me back up. So we have simple authoring. Then we move into the next step would be collaboration. What kind of collaboration do I have? Once you get into that collaboration, you have self-management, which GitHub is really good for. But in that collaboration, you also want some kind of edit and review process, right? GitHub is really good when it comes to conflict resolutions, as far as looking for some way to check your copy in your draft area to somebody else's copy, and if you can pull it together and collaborate that way. Some systems need a little bit more when it comes to collaboration, which if you look at one of the things that we offer here is that we offer the ability to put sticky notes on areas so people can comment, because sometimes you want to have a conversation, right? So I'm posting that. You can see that Christopher posted that, and if I was working on this with anybody else, they would post, and then we could have a conversation on that topic right there, and then we could go back, and then we could, you know, resolve the conflicts. So sometimes you need a little more, and it all depends on the size of your documents and the size of your organization, right? So, but those are the things that you're looking for. You're looking for that simple authoring tool, that collaboration effort, the conflict resolution, edit and review, and publishing. You hit those stages, and then you are going to have your solution that is simple enough for an SME to use, but powerful enough for a technical architect to use. And then you will do the one thing that I live for. This is what I preach. This is where I want everybody to go. Documentation is not a business expense. It's a revenue generating tool. It is the most powerful tool that any business out there has to provide the best customer experience, getting you loyal customers, and they are less price sensitive. And I mean, all this stuff, like, you know, with shutting down the economy's bad or whatever, none of that affects a loyal customer. They always come back to you, right? So it's recession proof. Okay. So if you follow those steps to look for that solution that's strong enough, I mean, that's simple enough for an SME to use, but powerful enough for a technical writer to use, you will get to this end result, which is what you want. All right. Woo, 6 minutes to spare. I think I did that pretty good. And I know I went over a lot, and I know probably, okay, let's see, we got a couple of questions here. Does this solution integrate with GitHub like VS Code works with GitHub Desktop? So at this moment, it doesn't. It's more of an import. It's not an API that's directly pushing and pulling to GitHub. We do have push and pulls here within the excuse me, let me get to my drafts. We do have the same push and pull system. Like, for example, this is my drafts area. You can see here with my edits that I've got a bold indicator that lets me know that I've got a file there that does not match up with what's in the drafts area. So I can actually then view my differences. And then in my differences, it's actually showing me what's wrong. So those are all the same features that you can find in GitHub and the desktop. Our target audience is technical writers, so we're presenting in a way that makes a little bit more sense to technical writers. So that's why we do it. But we also wanted to make sure that, you know, we're kind of giving technical writers control over the system. This is a system that they can manage as far as setting the roles, making sure the message comes out, especially that last in there where it's like, okay, who are you going to have the conversation with? And, you know, let's have a record of that conversation. We put kind of features like that in there for our solution because it's a little more appealing than just a straight Visual Studio GitHub solution. So that's kind of where we're going with our solution. But as far as pulling it in, we do have that on the roadmap. We realize that would be a huge benefit to everybody who's using our tool. Tony just hasn't made a decision on how he wants it to work yet, but that will be coming. But I'm not here to push the product. I just seriously, let me get back on track. I wanted to give everybody a methodology to get that solution that you're looking for, one that's simple enough for SMEs to use and powerful enough for technical authors, writers to use. And I wanted to make sure that you had points that you can make sure of, that these points are met, or these boxes are checked when you're looking for a solution. Did I do that? Did everybody feel like they got a sense of that out of this? Okay, good. So was this helpful? Good for you guys? All right. Any questions out there? Any other questions?
I think Zora had a question. She says, are there free vendor options for GitHub?
Oh, did I miss that one? What was the question?
Are there free vendor options for GitHub?
Well, GitHub, yes, like Visual Studio, Visual Studio is free. So if you want to pull that in there, you can use Visual Studio. There are other options out there like Visual Studio. I mean, if you think of it this way, Visual Studio is think of that as your editing tool. That would be like your frame maker or something like that, right? And so it's API or incorporated into GitHub. You can also use other authoring tools like Notepad++. I mean, I do most of my authoring in Notepad++. That's what I use, right? And as far as like how you access the files, depends on your setup. So, for example, when I'm in my GitHub, I am accessing files here through my browser interface. All the files live on the GitHub server. I don't have anything local, right? When I go to GitHub Desktop, I'm putting local repositories that mirror what's in GitHub on my local desktop, and then I'm accessing the local files with applications that I've installed locally, right? Because in essence, is what it did is that when I installed GitHub Desktop, it created a GitHub folder. And in that GitHub folder, you can see there are my repositories listed, right? So Visual Studio has a way to access local files. I can manually go to that location. I could open up my local file in a Notepad++ editor, and then I can make changes. But it's what you're giving up, right? Because you want that. See, if I made the change here, I'd come over to GitHub, the desktop, and then I would push in full changes, right? So I'm not using Visual Studio there at all. So I understand that it gets complicated, but think of it this way. Today, most applications just give you a different way to do the same function, right? Most of that's what you're looking for. You're looking for, okay, if you're going to do it differently, what value are you giving me by doing it differently, right? I mean, I could sit here and I could say, I can use this GitHub area and just use this, edit here, do everything online, never have anything stored locally. I could do this on a notepad, right? I could do this on an iPad. I could sit there and type and store and do everything, and I'd never have to do anything, right? But as your documentation grows and your needs grow, you will need tools. And those tools will do the exact same thing, but they have a value add that they're giving you to accomplish something at the end. Did I articulate that well? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, good. So, so yeah, you're going to see a lot of them. I mean, there's more than one way to do things. It's what you're looking for is you're looking for the best way for you to do it. And things that you're going to consider when you're looking for the best way is, okay, are my SMEs going to like it? And are my customers going to love it? Because that's where you want to go.
Sure, sure. Well, we are at the hour. So I appreciate, this has all been very enlightening, and thank you so much for answering all the questions and just for giving this presentation. It's very
it's one I would love to give. And like I said, I mean, if we need to do a follow-up and are you know, if y'all start spreading the word and you get more members that want to see it again, because I mean, recordings are great, but you can't really ask questions during the recording.
right.
So I'll be more than happy to put this out there, because honestly, I feel it's a turning point for our industry. I really feel like if we adopt this model, that we can start really collaborating and getting some awesome documentation out there, because we haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg of what documentation could do for a company. I mean, we didn't even discuss about, okay, now that you got it out there in front of the customers, how do we get feedback from the customers? How do we refine this? How do we hone this to make it better? You know, and that's a whole nother 2 or 3 presentations. So, but this is where we start. We start with solutions like this, so we get the collaborative effort that we need to get that documentation out there.
Sure, sure. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if I get any, you know, any feedback of anything that needs to be directed towards you, I will.
Absolutely. Both Faith and Bob, first of all, thank y'all for having me. As I said, Lone Star is my favorite chapter.
Hey.
You guys are awesome. And next time I'm up there, we'll do some barbecue or something.
Oh,
But
that'd be awesome.
but Faith and Bob have all my contact information. Faith, Bob, y'all can share it with anybody you need to. But that would probably be the good first step, is that reaching out to either Faith or Bob first and then following up that way.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thanks a
All
lot,
right.
Chris.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you
bet.
so much.
You have a good day. Bye-bye.
Everybody-